Okay, so we now move to a different theme now. We've been speaking about rulings pertaining to fasting and the reaffirmation of the fast for even without being able to offer the payment in place of the fast, and then that the ruling still applies for the people who are temporarily travelling and those who are temporarily ill or travelling, that they don't have to fast. And then we were talking about the reasons behind that. Ooh, what was the next bit? Oh, my mind's gone. What was the previous verse that was here? Sorry. Well, you already do, and the whole purpose behind this is that Allah wants ease for you and not hardness. And the whole purpose is that you complete this month fully, and that you glorify God for what He's guided you to, and that you may feel a sense of gratitude in this. And now Allah shifts to something different. Notice that this shift is very beautiful. It's very powerful. Iltifat. Notice the previous verses were all in the passive, and it was addressing the believers. And then it moved into third person, talking about those who are in different circumstances that won't be able to fast. And then eventually it moved to Allah speaking directly. Allah being mentioned explicitly in the third person. يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. So we've got passive where Allah's not mentioned, then Allah being mentioned explicitly in the third person, and now a shift to the first person. So we're gradually growing closer in our awareness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these stages through the fast and through adhering to these commandments that He has ordained for us. Very, very powerful, that. And Allah starts with wow, and on top of all of that, so this is wow al-istitnafiyya, introduces a completely new sentence. It's not a list. And of all of and on top of all of this, إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. And on top of all of this, when my servants ask you, سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي, so Allah's speaking in the first person here, so they ask about me, and it's mentioning the Prophet ﷺ for the first time as well. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ, and if they ask you, notice 3 consecutive vowels, so then we go hunting for the subject, which is عِبَادِي, but we don't see a dhamma on it because it's got a ya, the attached pronoun, that blocks the sign of dhamma, of the dhamma state, the rafa'. And that's an idafa construction because it's got an attached pronoun on the end. So my servants, when they ask you, anni, about me. Okay, this is one of the most powerful sections of the Quran here. So now there's this shift in this interest about connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if my servants ask you, O Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about me, okay. There's the circumstances around this verse. There are different narrations. Some say this was when the Muslims, which we're going to actually touch on in a few verses to come, is that some of the Muslims are not able to keep up with the fast and commit to it fully. They broke some of the rules concerning fasting, and so they felt broken. Okay, and if we take it in that light, then the context of this verse is say, even if you end up breaking the fast, not able to do it, know that you can call upon me for strength. You can call upon me for forgiveness. So we can look at it 2 ways. Either that this seems hard, but Allah's saying, no, it's not hard. Allah's made things easy for you, and He doesn't want hardship. And when you are striving and you are struggling, ask of me. Okay, that's the first context. Or second, if you have wronged yourselves, if you have ended up contravening the rules of the fasting, then ask of me for forgiveness. Okay, that's one. There's another narration that says that a Bedouin came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked, "Is our Lord close?" So we speak to him discreetly. We lower our voices, or is he far? So we need to call out to him. And then the Prophet ﷺ fell silent, and his verse was revealed. Okay, so that's about the context here. Is a theological question about where Allah is in place. Okay, and so that gives us another context for this verse. What's interesting as well is that this could induce fear in the believer. So if my slave asks of me, know that I'm close. So he should watch his actions. And fasting is a means to do that, to bring about taqwa. Okay? But then later on, the next part of the verse talks about that it's to do with hope. Okay? So, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي. So we've now got the Prophet ﷺ involved, and we've got Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala involved as well. Now, إِذَا suggests that it's done regularly. Okay, we've got two tools of the condition. Well, we've got many, but to express if, there's a few, but the most common ones are in and إِذَا. And in expresses taqalil, or something qalil, that it's minimal. It doesn't happen often, or it expresses doubt. Whilst إِذَا expresses something's going to be certain and it occurs a lot. So this verse encourages us to ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala much. That's suggested in the إِذَا itself. It also imbibes and induces a sense of curiosity, like when you ask a question. You know, the Bedouins used to come to the Prophet ﷺ and ask these questions. The Sahaba, the companions, became really curious, wishing to know the answer to these questions. So, if my servants ask of me. Now, ibadi, there's two common plurals for the word abd. So, ibad is a plural of abd. And we have abid, or we have ibad. Abid is usually suggests that they are low and they are broken. Okay. Whilst ibad gives an honor because of the alif. Ibad is honorific. So, and this is speaking specifically about the believers here, because the believers are the ones who've been dressed about the rules of fasting. And so the whole context is fasting here. And what this tells us also is that, and this is really beautiful, this, if we go back to the Ayatul Bir, the verse about all-encompassing goodness and righteousness, it was addressing society. Okay, it's addressing the individual, but then moving into charity and social obligations. And then Allah moved into retribution, which is societal as well. Then He talked about wasiyah, about inheritance, because when qisas is linked to death, and obviously when someone dies, so retribution, the retributive laws to do to death, taking the life of another. And then so obviously a will has to be put into place for that when someone passes away. And also the wasiyah, the will, is to do with family. So society as a whole on a macro level, and then family on a medium level, and then we move to Sawm, fasting, which is an individual act and right and injunction. But it also has ramifications on one's relationship with those around them, because fasting obviously is in the month of Ramadan we feel more compassionate towards one another. We give to one another, we give charity, and we feel the struggles of other people. Okay, and when one's in that state of struggle, and it brings a sense of taqwa in one's heart, because they realize their neediness because they're fasting. And that brings about a greater state and presence so that you can ask Allah. And so fasting was prescribed in order to imbibe taqwa in the heart of the believer, so that then they can actually call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this move of the themes is really like inspiring, and it's really divine. You can see the divine nature of the Quran in this order and the way that it's laid out. There's a lot to cover today, so I'm just making sure I cover everything. And it shows that there's because it's asking if my servants. Remember, notice the previous verses were addressing the believers directly. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Fasting has been prescribed upon you, and it's always you in the state. Now it's moved to the you being the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to show that there's now this sense of distance between the believers. There's this shift in the person, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the person through whom we can gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Allah's addressing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and not his servants directly. Now, what's interesting here as well, often in the Quran, Allah uses sometimes ibadi, and he sometimes uses ibadi. He omits the ya and just has a kasra on there. Ibadi makes it more expansive and more emphatic. Ibadi, okay, my servants, opening himself up to all of the believers here. That's another linguistic ploy there. Anni, an, the preposition an implies distance. Okay, there's a separation between them. So the believer feels separation. And now Allah is going to answer, فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. So if my servants ask about me, concerning me, for verily I am close. Now this is really powerful, because you'd assume that Allah is addressing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If they ask you about me, you'd expect the answer to be فَقُلْ. So say to them. But he doesn't. It's completely omitted here, and Allah answers it directly himself. فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. I am close. He doesn't say, so say to them, I am close. He says, I am close. And we're going to go into why Allah does that. Okay, but first, we've got to realize that for inni qareeb, for verily I am close. And also notice that Allah is using the first person singular to say it's a personal relationship. And this for inni qareeb is not the second clause of this conditional sentence, because remember, for something to be a second clause, it's got to be a condition on that. So if I say, if you go to the shops, I'll give you chocolate, the chocolate is conditional upon you going to the shops. But if my servants ask about me, I am close. That's not related. There's no condition between the two of them, because he's always close. That's not a condition. But so there's something implicit here. It's been omitted. إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي, then say to them. So when they ask me, say to them. So you saying to them is conditioned upon them asking you. So the second clause has been completely omitted to show that the Prophet ﷺ is the means for one to come directly into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are directly in contact with Allah. So the second clause has been completely pulled إِذَا سَأْلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي, if my servants ask concerning me, and then there's no answer to the second clause, I am close. It's as if you don't even need that condition. There's no condition upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being close to us. It's very, very powerful, that. فَإِنِّي قَرِيب. So fa cannot be the fa of connection here because it's not the clause. So that would be interesting. I didn't even look into that. What is the fa here? Yes. No, the fa is for immediacy here. It expresses immediacy. I am immediately, then no, immediately, without any hesitation, I am close. So notice the emphasis, so the fa for immediacy, inna for emphasis, because there's doubt in the believer. They think, I am far from Allah. He can't answer my prayers because I'm so distant and I'm so, and I've committed so many offences and He's so magnificent and I'm nothing. But Allah says, no, have no doubt. Inni qareeb. I am, me personally, individually, close. Qareebun. And notice he doesn't, this is very interesting, he doesn't say, fa inni qareebun minhum. He doesn't say I'm close to them. He just says I'm close. Without close, and it's so close to, I'm close to everything. I am the only. I am the one you ask upon. I am your focus. So he leaves it completely general there. And notice as well, this is a noun sentence. And a noun sentence is more emphatic than a verb sentence to express that Allah is always. It doesn't come and go. It is permanent. Allah is the ultimate and close. Okay, so very, very powerful section here. Just going through, making sure I've covered everything. Yeah. So what does Allah say next? Ujibu da'wata da'i idha da'an. Just as powerful, this. Okay. So ujibu is a fourth form or third form, as I teach in the 10 forms. Ajaba yujibu means to answer. But we're going to see in the next part of this verse, there's another form of answering. Istajaba, istajibu. But we're going to look at that. Ujibu implies immediacy. Okay, fourth form means something's immediate and it's dramatic and powerful. That's what's implied by the fourth form. Oh, and I forgot something, sorry. Allah is close, i.e. through His knowledge and His mercy of us. Okay, so He knows our actions, He knows our speeches, He knows our states, and so He is there for us. No matter what our state, do not think that Allah is far from you. He is close to you if you just turn to Him. Okay. Now Allah says, so do you want to feel Allah's closeness? He says, ujibu, I personally. And notice He uses the present tense here, the mudari', the imperfect, to imply continuously. Allah will continuously answer what? Da'wata da'i. He will answer the call of the caller. Okay. Now, da'a means to call out. But the usual word for prayer is du'a. But Allah uses da'wah. And da'wah could mean one du'a. This is what we call ismul marra. Okay, some of the scholars disagreed with this. Okay. Or it could imply specific, like each specific du'a. Okay. Ujibu da'wata da'i. Which means what? Why did Allah use da'wa over du'a? Because da'wa, he answers every single du'a. Okay, for us. And that specific du'a that we call upon. Okay. A da'i is the one that calls. Now, again, look at this. This is very interesting. We've got the verb da'a, which is a weak verb. It's got a waw at the end as a root letter. Yada'u. And the active participle, the one who does the act, the ismul fa'il, is da'in, which when you add the alif and lam, you actually see the ya. Notice it's da'in. This is similar to qadin. We say qadin, but if you add alif and lam, it becomes qadi. So that kasra, two kasras on the end, is not because it's in a state of jar. It's because it's hiding the ya, which is a root letter, qaf, dal, and ya. And it shows when you put alif and lam, it becomes qadi, the one who judges, da'i, the one that calls. But notice the ya is missing here, even though there's alif and lam here. So it's been emitted. That's very interesting as well. And so the emission here is to express the desperation of the one calling, as if you're not da'wat da'i, as if he's calling out in desperation. Wa da'i, we just make it more as if he's got time and he's crying it out. But this is the one who is in desperation. And it implies also the individual, each individual, da'i. Allah answers that call. Either da'ani. Now look at these omissions. So there's actually no omission with ibadi, which we said, but da'i there is. And then he says either da'ani. So we've got either twice here. When he calls me. So this is, the verb is da'a, and then it's got ni on the end. He calls me. But notice the ya's missing again. Okay. So this implies again, and there are different narrations. There's some da'ani. There are some there's some variations of the Quran where it actually stretches it, and some they say da'ani, da'an if you stop on it, but if you continue da'ani and stretch it, in Hafs you keep it short, da'ani, or da'an if you stop on it. And again, this implies, notice me personally. As an individual, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not using the plural, he's using the singular to show that personal relationship, and to show it's cut off the ya, to show immediacy as well. Okay, so very beautiful play linguistically, that so much is lost in the translation. Some of the scholars said either is actually an adverb, so you just translate it as I answer the call of the caller when he calls on me. But some said no, it means if. So if he calls on me, I answer the call. And then we ask, if that's the case, why has Allah put the second clause before the first? Because you'd assume it would be, if he asks me, calls upon me, I will answer his call. But this suggests that Allah has already answered his prayer even before he's made that dua. The moment that Allah has inspired one to even call, before you even utter it, Allah answers it. So it's very powerful linguistical play there as well. Okay. Just making sure I'm covering all this, because as I said, there's so much to cover here. And notice he says, whenever he calls upon me, to state that Allah is ready to answer the prayer at any time and any place. Wherever we call upon him, he will answer. And so this still invites us that if we have needs, to call upon him. And Allah wants us to express ourselves if we want something. And that's a lesson in life, is that if we want something from others, not just Allah, from others, we need to ask of it. Not just expect people to answer. Not thinking, well, Allah knows my state, he should answer. He answers. No, rather that he wants to answer you when you call. Yeah, and notice he says, I don't answer the petitioner, the one calling. I answer their very call, and every individual call that they make. So focusing on the importance of dua in our lives, and that as I said, gratitude and taqwa and magnifying Allah, which has been mentioned previously, they bring about a state whereby one is in a state for their prayers to be answered. And so this is one of the main purposes of Ramadan, to put us in this state of taqwa, so that we're all struggling together, so we feel this sense of a closeness to Allah, so that we can actually get our prayers answered. And notice also that the initially this part of the verse, the surah, the ayah, is that it seems like a theological question. If my servants ask of me, is it asking about where Allah is? So Allah, instead of answering it theologically, He answers it practically. And this is very important for us as Muslims. He's saying, look, the whole purpose is to know about Allah, is not to know where He is and how He is and so. It's to know that He is there to answer our prayers. So Allah does this a lot in the Quran. People ask these questions that seem quite technical and theological, and Allah always brings it back to a practical element. You should be calling upon me. That's another aspect of this. Okay. And we know that our prayers are always answered as long as we fulfill those conditions, i.e., of trying to make sure our income and our food is halal, and that we are working on ourselves and trying to implement as much as we can of Allah's religion. And the most important thing is that we are sincere in our hearts. We might be struggling, we might be broken, we might have faults, but we are really trying. That's what Allah asks of us. And we're not looking for dispensations and trying to make excuses for ourselves and dismissive of any effort that we have to make on our part. The most important thing is that we have a working relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and our prayer be answered. And we know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam clarified that our prayers are answered in three ways. Either He answers them immediately, or He delays them for a time when they're suitable for that prayer to be answered. Or, if it's not suitable that prayer be answered, He stores it up for something greater in the next life for us. And so they say that in the next life, people will actually wish that none of their prayers are answered in this life for when they see the reward of what they will get in the next life. And so, just wrapping it up, making sure I've covered everything. Yep, so as we were saying, this was an interesting thing about fasting. I got mad from someone. He says, Sawm, according to the Arabs before Islam, was an act that they did for their horses. Their horses struggled in the desert, and so they would put them through training whereby they were used to heat and used to thirst. And so it's as if Allah is saying in these verses, fasting is upon you, not upon the horse. In fact, you are the horse that you need to train. And you are the own property. Allah owns you. And fasting is training in order to prepare you for battle as well. Because remember, these verses were revealed around just before the injunction for the Muslims to fight back against the idolaters of Mecca. And so it's as if fasting is training for them to be perseverant and have resilience when facing the enemy as well. So there's many, many beautiful things there. I hope that you've been able to really appreciate some of the beauty in this verse and how much is lost when we have to translate, and how much you experience when you do have access to the Arabic. Tomorrow, inshallah, we'll be going through the next part, فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ, to complete this verse.